Not something stupid. I bought cars. Of course I did. The first any kind of money I made, I went out and I bought that 1970 Dodge Charger. If you look on the inside sleeve of Hemi-Vision, when you open it up, there's that big green Dodge Charger. Well, that's what I bought with my money when I first made money. And it was all the money I had at the time. I think I paid 10 grand for that car, which was insane. I was like, are you kidding me? Oh
Yeah,
my God.
you're rich. There you go.
It was crazy. Um, a year after that, I bought myself a Mercedes convertible, a vintage Mercedes convertible. I love those cars. And it was 20 grand, which was twice as much money. I mean, the year before, I couldn't imagine spending 10 grand. The following year, I was spending twice that much without blinking. Like, oh, wait a minute.
Moving on up.
Maybe just slow down with the car purchases for a minute. But I can see this becoming a habit forming thing. It really wasn't until my wife, who back then was my girlfriend, she got involved in our business, and people were like, "Oh, is that a good idea? Like to get your girlfriend involved in your finances?" But she'd worked in finance for Pepsi Corporation, KFC Corporation. Like she'd done corporate stuff, and it was important. She showed me pretty quickly where all of our money was going, and it was just a leaky bucket. And not we weren't being ripped off. Like I could never have accused a former manager or anybody. They weren't trying to rip us off ever. Were they not spending wisely? Yeah, there was a lot of careless, just money being lost. Music is a leaky boat, man. Rock and roll. If you're going to make it in rock and roll, figure out a way to stop the hemorrhaging, because every band is out there just bleeding money. If I had known at the time, so when she got involved, we actually started saving money and spending it wisely and not frivolously. It's nice to have a tour bus and all the stuff that goes with rock and roll, but at some point, it's a long answer, but at some point, Big Sugar has also been for a long time about Rastafarian philosophy and ethos and beliefs and just the way you live your life. And it's not really like, I mean, it's not even like a religion, it's kind of an anti-religion, and it just deals with the practical everyday stuff. There's no deep mysteries or magic to Rastafarianism. It's a very like boots on the ground, how you treat somebody, how you think of yourself in terms of your vanity and what your motivations are. And, if you stopped and thought about some of your actions and what you do and why you do it, you might rethink that. And if you saw yourself the way others see you and how you treat others. And so that's the philosophy that gets talked about all day. And so at some point you have to turn and look around and go, how much dressing room stuff are we throwing out every night? Bags of chips and bottles of water and baskets of fruit and cheese trays. And there's all this stuff, and it just gets chucked when you leave the building. So we started bringing it on the tour bus. Well, let's eat all this stuff. Let's have all this stuff. And then you get to the end of a tour and they're throwing out this giant cache of foodstuffs and water bottles. And I thought, this is hypocritical. We're talking about the environment. We're talking about humanity and resources. We're in this giant tour bus and we have hotels and a tour bus. How much are we spending on gas? And it's just the generator's constantly going. Again, you're burning diesel fuel. And I was like, I'm okay with just a hotel. And what do we do with all this food? We started looking for homeless shelters, women's shelters, even just homeless people we'd see on the street. When that tour bus pull up to a corner and a bunch of guys with long hair and dreadlocks come out with boxes of food and bottles of water. You see a couple of guys standing at an intersection. It's like, guys, stay hydrated. Here's some chips, eat salt, drink water. That seemed more important to me than if we got the right kind of wine in the dressing room. You know what I mean? It's like, you could put your money where your mouth is. It's one thing to wear Rastafarian colors and ja this and ja that and ja what. You know, you hear guys rattle on and on about Rastafarianism, but they don't, you know, the Rasta guys that were influential to me and that I looked up to, they didn't live like that. They didn't just ball out ja and, you know, smoke ganja and things like that. They had a more concern for a deeper concern for others and for humanity in general, and less about themselves. So that's a big thing where kind of stop buying expensive things for myself, you know.
You had to do it. You had to do it once or
I have sold them subsequently.
yeah, you had to do it once or twice to know what that felt like, you know?
Yeah, it was a kick, you know what I mean? It's the same with guitars. I mean, look at, I don't know how many guitars I have. Lots, suffice to say. But I will say this about my guitars: I don't own any guitars I won't take on tour. They are all part of our working apparatus, so that I don't have to fly with half a dozen guitars to do a show. They can be there waiting for me. I have them squirreled away in different cities and things like that. But they're the tools of my trade. I do use them. I don't have any, you know, in a glass case anywhere.